Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host.
Quiet on the set.
Today, we're discussing the 5 movies nominated by the Directors Guild of America in the category of Theatrical Feature Film, specifically from an assistant director point of view. This will be the 74th Annual DGA Awards, and the ceremony will be held on March 12th. First, let me introduce today's panel. Katie Carroll, you're a member of the Directors Guild, currently working as a first AD, and it's your 3rd year appearing on our DGA panel. Welcome back.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Also back for his 3rd DGA panel, Bill Hardy, DGA member, first AD, and sometime producer. Nice to see you again.
Hey, Skid.
And joining us for the first time, Roger Mendoza, DGA member, and currently working as a 2nd AD. Welcome.
Hi, Skid. How are you?
I'm doing well, Roger. Glad you could join us. Finally, returning to the panel, Shaun O'Banion, still not in the DGA, but as in years past, we're giving you partial credit as a member of the Producers Guild of America. Additionally, since we last gathered, you've launched not 1, but 2 podcasts, which means you and I now share a very special kinship. Shaun, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I'm still putting my book together, guys. I'm still putting the book together. So.
We'll check in with you again. It's nice to see all of you. Let's dive right in this year. We're going to discuss the nominees alphabetically in order of director's last name. Listeners, this is your spoiler warning. First up, Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza.
Why did I realize we were going to start with that one? I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan.
Katie, say more. What didn't you like about this one?
The biggest thing I had with this one was like, just so much running. So much running. They're always running everywhere all the time. I got exhausted watching it. Like, Jiminy Christmas. And I wanted to like that one the most because it was LA. I grew up in LA. Like, it resonated that way. And there were some things I liked about it, but I couldn't get behind it.
The running actually led me to one of my main thoughts, which was it was a lot like Manhattan, which I used to love watching and don't like watching so much anymore. But the things that when I liked watching Manhattan, I was too young to think about. And now when I think about it, I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. So I think that 18-year-old me would have totally loved and been okay with this movie. But the adult me says, couldn't we have just said she was 18? And then I don't think we would have had any problems. Everything else, I thought, because it was it could have been fixed with dialogue, in my opinion. I don't know whether I'm crazy that she looks like she could have pulled off 18 too, and that would have worked for all the story parts, I think. But maybe that's not part of the story. Maybe it's supposed to be about the difference.
Completely agree. Like, that 10 years is a lot. If he was 15 and she was 18, 19, all right, it's still not ideal, but I can get by that. But 25 to 15 is huge. Even if back then we didn't realize how bad it was, now we do, which means this movie was made now. It's not okay.
But I think it's still okay to tell a story. I don't think you have to punish these characters for the age difference, and I don't think that the story is about sort of a pedophilia approach, talking about him being 15 and her being 25. I don't think that's as big a problem for the overall movie, nor for what Paul Thomas Anderson has put together here. This series of events and these sort of little anecdotal stories that I think are sort of his bread and butter. Again, is it on the top of his list for films, even on my top for the films this year? No, but it's not at the bottom.
This is going to seem really strange, but when I was, 14, I had a 22-year-old girlfriend. But she wasn't really my girlfriend. I just expected her to be my girlfriend. It's kind of the same thing that happens in the show. I was like, you will be mine. Right? So I can see when a young boy gets obsessed with somebody that's older and they still give them the time. Right? And they're like, yeah, you're cute. I'm going to hang out with you. But never was it ever inappropriate until I think that they were of age. So I wouldn't consider that a pedophilia story. They were just people that were simpatico.
I mean, I think you got more grounds, Katie, if you're bothered by the running, although it wasn't that long ago that I watched Last Night in Soho, which has a lot more running than this, incidentally, for the films of last year. That is a movie where they're doing a lot of running around. And
it was a very COVID-friendly shot. It's a year. Well, we'll just have them running. They're by themselves in this frame. It's a lot. It'll add action.
Well, the other way it's COVID friendly. Like, if you watch the credits, it gives credits to like literally almost all of the kids in all of the different groups that are gathered, and they all have the same last name, and they're all last names of his buddy's kids. So it's COVID friendly in that, like, there's 7 bubbles intermingling instead of 27 bubbles. Like, it's all his buddy's kids.
Yeah, lots of Spielbergs in there. Lots of,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't bump on the age thing, I guess partly for what Roger had said, that nothing physical happened in the beginning. And also, he's playing a kid who's an actor kid, who's a set kid. And those kids are only ever around grown-ups and interacting in an adult environment. So I just sort of thought, like, no wonder he's so forward and sort of aggressively pushing to be with her, because that's just how he knows to be now.
I agree. I mean, it never crossed the line. It was just an ick factor for me. It was still my second, maybe third favorite movie of the year, which is another conversation. But actually, I think it is this conversation. But I would have liked it more if just for that one little thing, which is kind of big.
Kind of a big little thing. It's a big little thing. I didn't like it overall. I am a P.T. Anderson fan. The only film of his that I think I didn't really like was Punch Drunk Love. And that was mostly because it was kind of sold to me even when it was being shot as something that then it didn't turn out to be. So when I went to see it in the theaters, I was confused by it. This one, I don't know. It felt like he had 4 different stories he wanted to tell, and he couldn't choose which one to tell. So he just mashed them all together, and then they all felt like they got short shrift to me.
Yeah, totally. It's a bunch of vignettes, but not vignettes that are cohesive. It's like he couldn't figure out where to go, and he was probably writing for the last 3 years. It was like, oh, what if I told this? Oh, what if I told that? And the only thing that keeps them all together, it's the valleys in like the late 70s. Well, that's not the same as the valley in Magnolia. No, it's different. And yeah,
or even Boogie Nights. Yeah,
exactly.
How long did the very end take with them delivering the bed to, I can't remember the guy's name.
John Peters.
Yeah.
Yes, that was so, I was annoyed at that point of the movie. I was like, why? Why is this happening now? Why is this taking so long?
Yes.
Yeah. The truck going down the hill, like a bit of slapstick. And I just kind of was like, what is happening?
Let's draw this out as long as we can.
I liked all those things that you guys just said you didn't like.
I love Bradley Cooper as John Peters. Like, that performance is
Yeah.
probably my favorite in the entire movie, but it wasn't like, if the best performance is a supporting actor, almost a cameo, what does that mean about the whole movie if that stands out as the best thing about the movie?
I thought Alana was really good. I mean, for me, I think she was the best thing in it. I thought she was excellent for being, first time. I think it's her first time acting, and certainly her first time in a feature. I thought she was great.
She was great. I still don't think she was the best part of the movie, but
well,
like
Bradley's a scene stealer,
He is.
Definitely. And being also from Los Angeles, just the way that it was depicted and the way that they were able to make, find those places that still look like they were in the 70s, and production design, art direction, all that kind of stuff, costuming, I thought was phenomenal. Typical for P.T. Anderson films, but really great.
Yes.
Also, with noting on that is that setting it just a couple of decades ago is actually a really challenge from all those reasons you said, Shaun, to get all those things right, and certainly attention to detail. And I'm sure, it's a big part of the production overall that I give it credit for that as well.
Totally random and completely off kilter. But watching the credits, I don't know if y'all know, besides all of his buddies' friends, the gaffer gets above the line credits. The key grip doesn't. I don't quite understand that. They work hand in hand. Like, one can't do much without the other.
Somebody had a better agent.
At producer's discretion.
Yeah, so that one I rewound. Like, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? Okay, just checking. All right, fair enough.
All right, well, we got a mixed jury on that one. Next up, let's talk about Kenneth Branagh for Belfast.
Somebody else go first.
I'll go. It was another one that, I think it had won the Sundance Audience Award, something like that. I mean, it came with a lot of buzz, and I'm watching it on a screener, so it was my first time looking at it after hearing so much about it. I wasn't blown away by it. I liked some of what Brana did. I liked that he went to color anytime they went to the movie theater. I thought that was pretty great. But I wasn't wowed by the little boys, the lead performance. I wasn't even wowed by, Kieran Hines or Judi Dench. They were fine. Overall, it just kind of I was like, yeah, it was sweet, I guess.
That's what I was going to say, but it was the Branaghl's sweet little movie, which was, I think, as an amazing director, he was just been getting out of control. I think, at a certain 10 years ago, he was already 10 stories above the top. So as this is bringing it back down to a more understandable level, I think it was a little biographical from what I read. And yeah, it just felt really relatable to me. So I was able to enjoy all the characters. That's my Irish heritage though, too.
Yeah, mine too. And I'll just say with Judi Dench, even Judi Dench at fine is still light years above everybody else. I mean,
Yeah,
you can't not watch the screen when she's on camera. Just a little smirk she gives, and you're like, okay, I'm there. She's everybody's grandma at that point, and you're like, I'm home. I didn't grow up in Ireland, but I'm home right now with this family cohesion and a couple that's arguing but still trying to make it work for their family. And I love the story about it.
This is the movie where there's a couple of examples this year, but every year I end up talking about perspective and the little kid perspective, where the real world stuff is happening in an adult conversation in the background. If you're paying attention, you catch it, but it's not the kid's perspective. So he's at street level, literally, with the story that's going on and how it's affecting things.
Yeah, Bill, I think I'm going to disagree with you on this one, because I think this movie could have benefited by sticking stronger to that kid's point of view. I think a lot of what's going on in Ireland and the Troubles is actually very, very present in this film in a way that I think hurts it. I think it hurts the overall story. I also appreciate the small hometown stuff, but given that it's autobiographical, I think the drama about what the family's going to decide at the end is kind of absent from the film, because you kind of know where Kenneth Branagh ended up. And it wasn't, with a broken family in Northern Ireland. Like, he moved. We know that.
Right.
And because they spend so much time on sort of the tensions there, that tension feels empty. And I think that makes the film feel solid and not revelatory on either side of it, for me, on either side of that divide between the hometown sort of story of the child or the larger issues about the Troubles. And I think it straddles it in a way that is nostalgic for him personally, but I didn't find that engaging.
I hear what everybody's saying, but you're all wrong. No, there's specific elements that really caught my eye, that brought me into it. I have to say that, things like through the barricades at the end of the street, kind of confining this kid's world. I really liked that. And the fact that everybody keeps saying this is only going to be another couple of months, when we know that in hindsight that it just ended in 98. So it wasn't my favorite movie, but I definitely liked it more than you guys, I guess.
No, it's still up there for me. I just loved it as a story and yeah.
I didn't really know a lot about the Troubles, but I had a lot of respect for the movie, and I'm an immigrant, so I moved away from Colombia because things were weird in the 80s. So for me, it resonated in the fact that Dad really wanted to move the family away from the danger. We know that's not where it ultimately ended, right? But the same thing happened in my family, where my family moved, my dad stayed. So in order to be able to get away from the danger, and I wish they would have shown it more from the perspective of the child rather than the perspective of the parents, because I think that's where I agree with Skid. That's where it veered away, where it should have been more focused on how the child saw the world, because I think it would have been more magical. But that's the director's choice.
Shaun, do you also affiliate with your Irish background on that? Is that because I do as well, right?
Sure. But I don't know if I don't know about the Troubles either. So a lot of that I was kind of like trying to get up to speed on and figure out what was going on and why it seemed, so confined to this one street that all this stuff is going on and tying into the dad. So, I spent a little bit of time just trying to get my feet under me in terms of Irish history and Belfast history, which I guess in a way kept me at a bit of an arm's length for the first 20 or so minutes of trying to figure out who these people are and what their lives are.
I'm just going to go like good old American racism, right? Where everybody hates anybody that's not white, right? I lived in the South most of the time, so I was always black, even though I'm Colombian. Like for me, it's really odd to have a group of people that hate each other just solely based on religion, right? You're Catholic, I'm Catholic, or I was born Catholic. It's really odd that these religions that believe in the same thing want to kill each other. It was kind of enlightening to me that people just want to hate each other for very small, minute differences, even though they're all the same color. For me, racism has always been about color. So maybe in that way, it just means that humans suck.
Oh yeah, humans can always find reasons to hate each other.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think if this was in the first-time directors category, it would definitely probably be the top film down there.
Number one.
Yeah.
But I just think we expect more, whether it's the themes and how it's delivered and executed. This is a solid film, and so it doesn't take anything away from Kenneth Branagh's repertoire, but I think I just expect more of him. And I think it's fair to expect more of him with this material.
I think it was magical at the very beginning, that opening scene where she's calling for the kid to come eat or come for tea, and they find him. If they would have stuck on his perspective, I think it would have been way more magical.
Yeah.
All right, Bill, everything you said is wrong, basically. That's what we've concluded as a panel. If there's no last word on that, we'll move on to the third film on our list. Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog.
I'm just going to assume that you guys all love this movie.
You know what? I'll be honest. I didn't like it. I thought it was like okay until the last 10 minutes. And then I was all in. I was like, I'm in. Sold. The last 10 minutes got me. I'm like, all right. Yeah, it's been an hour and a half, an hour, 20 hour, 40 minutes, whatever it is, build up for the 10 minutes. Like, sold.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It was first of all, I mean, it's beautiful, just
Yes.
beautifully shot. The way they shoot through things. There's always kind of this proscenium looking through barn doors into other rooms and through the kitchen door into the serving area and things like that. And just gorgeous to look at. But yeah, the same thing. I mean, performances aside, which I also think were great. So yeah, just watching and sort of wondering, where is the movie going? And the Bronco Henry thing, and is it going to be a movie about a guy sort of grooming this young boy for a relationship, or and it just wasn't revealing itself. And then you get to the last 10 minutes and like, here's what it is, and by the way, we're done.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Here's what it is. And by the way, that has to go with the prologue and the voiceover. That was the first 30 seconds of the movie. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see why you're telling this story.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally makes sense now. Until that last 10 minutes, it was, wow, this kid's going to suck as a doctor. Oh, he's going to be a brilliant doctor. Okay, I get it. Like, how is he not figuring that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like, is he a serial killer? Burgeoning serial killer? Is he like what is going on?
Yeah.
When Jesse Plemons just vanishes from the movie for a portion of time, I was like, wait, I thought this was this Jesse Plemons, Kirsten Dunst movie. What's going on?
I hate to make a comparison because I'm not an M. Night Shyamalan fan, but it makes you think of The Sixth Sense, which I actually hated when I was watching straight through, the most boring ghost story ever. But at the end, there's that twist that goes. I do think this movie, to move away from that comparison, is more engaging all the way through. As Sean pointed out, I think it's beautiful to watch. I think the Western stuff is on point. Like, it feels very much like a dusty, lived-in Western rather than just sort of packaged around sort of a Western idea, which I thought really works for the sort of understated approach to the material. I think the end sort of locks in my appreciation of the film overall, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, the one other thing I loved about it was like the sound design, like the dead quiet, and then the boots on wood floors, and depending on who's walking, the sound of the different boots. And literally the exact same steps can either sound menacing or welcoming. It helped you immerse yourself into this world that's so isolated from everything else.
I need better speakers. I'm gonna have to watch it again with headphones on.
Get an Apple TV and use your AirPods. It's great. You got the spatial audio.
I've been bullied, when I was younger. So for me, like the sense of dread that Cumberbatch brought to his character was palpable.
Yes.
Like it's something that I could really relate to at some point, where I think out of all the people that are on this list, like that guy should get some kind of award for being that terrifying. He made me feel unsettled the entire time that I watched the movie, which I found very interesting.
He does an amazing job of presenting the inner turmoil. He's a bully, but
Yeah.
you
At the same time, that's who he is.
yeah.
Now, wait a minute, Roger, how did you tie this one into your life story? You said something about, I'm noticing a trend with how you relate to these films.
Like that's really how I relate to films, right? Like those experiences that I had as a child. Like if you can make me feel the way that I felt when I was younger, then 100% I'm full in, right? And I think filmmakers as a whole always relate to those things. So that the idea was, let's make this guy feel as menacing as possible. He was the biggest bully out there. I felt that just watching it. It made me relive the emotions that I hadn't felt for a very long time. That he was threatening and menacing, and I think the scene where he decides to at the beginning, where he decides to menace him when they're in the kitchen or in the dining room area was to me, it sold the entire movie to me. I was like, so he's homophobic, and so he might have a hang up about being gay, and he's going to bully this person that he feels is fine being whoever wants to be. That was threatening, and it sold, like his performance sold the entire film for me.
While we're talking about, I mean, we should also say, I don't know for everybody, but for me, I thought Kirsten Dunst was fantastic. Her,
Yes.
This time period where women had no agency and were basically, if not for the person they married, in a lot of trouble, and the way that she played this slow descent into alcoholism based on the treatment by Benedict's character. I mean, a very impressive performance, I thought.
Bill, you introduced it saying, are you going to counter program on us?
Well, I mean, I was accurate. I think I was accurate in my prediction of how this one was going to go. It was about 5 minutes into the movie where I went, all right, how long is it going to be before we see Benedict Cumberbatch full frontal nudity? And there it was. Like, I like Jane Campion. I do, obviously, because I just made a Harvey Keitel joke. Like, it's like, I saw the piano. I love Top of the Lake, but it took me like 4 different sittings. I had to keep stopping and walking away, which I really don't like doing in general, because I think it affects everything else. But I thought the performances were great. I did get caught up at the very end and went, oh, okay, I should. That's a really great place to end. But for that first hour, I was like, oh my God, all right, yeah, let's go. I don't know. I think I'm just getting more impatient with established directors.
I'm close to you, Bill. I mean, I was definitely going, this movie is weird, man. Yeah. Like, it's just weird. What is, where is the story going?
And I expect that from Jane Campion too. like a lot of distraction, look over here, because this is where the real story is. Yeah. But, yeah.
I just thought, especially since, apropos of nothing, considering they shot New Zealand, I thought Montana was big sky country and there are a lot of hills and mountains. But it's still beautiful. It passed. But for shooting mid-COVID, as far as I could tell, shooting in New Zealand, they got some pretty big name actors who probably had to fly in, quarantine for over 2 weeks in a hotel room to shoot 1 day, 2 days, fly back 2 weeks, like spend more time traveling than shooting, but they're in. Let's do it. Why not?
Well, they only had to get one room for Kirsten and Jesse, so that saved them.
Another bubble.
It's all about the bubbles.
It really is. Listen to last year's. We weren't talking about bubbles last year's conversation.
Yeah,
it's
and
true.
That was still in the middle of it.
Well, the fourth film on our list is Steven Spielberg for West Side Story.
Oh boy. Go for it, Bill. Go.
Boo. Boo.
I mean, all right, I'm the film geek, or we're all film geeks, but I mean, like, I grew up watching the original. I've been fully aware my entire adult life, all the things that are wrong with this movie that I find very, very precious. Most of which, the fact that there's white folks in brown face for who knows. There's probably Asians playing Puerto Ricans in the original. I can almost guarantee it. Like it's I'm sure there's a lot of racism going on and problems with the original, but it stays close to the source material. I mean, like that's where I came down on this, was that West Side Story, for those of you who don't know, is Romeo and Juliet. It's almost scene for scene. And Spielberg decided to rewrite Shakespeare. I mean, I think that says that to me. Like there was just so much to fix. I don't know why he had to fix things that weren't wrong.
I mean, yes, the casual racism is hard to watch. But then you also have, yes, a movie based on a musical that was written in the early to mid 50s that has a song called America with lyrics like, yeah, we can do this, but only if you're white in America. Like, the lyrics of the songs flat out call out the racism that exists in America. So I still have a love of Sondheim, but problematic as he can be. But I have a love of Sondheim. And Rina Moreno, another one up there with Judi Dench, can do no wrong. And then when I watch the credits, executive producer Rina Moreno, I'm like, okay, I can... How much do I choose to ignore what's bad about that versus how are we I don't know. But I mean, you can't listen to America and not love everything that's happening right at that moment. That song is brilliant.
But there was a lyric that they dropped that really got me. And maybe I have to ask you, Roger.
Yeah.
Was it always the population growing? Is that racist? There's something.
Well, I was going to say, let's let the actual Latino guy speak about this as opposed to a bunch of white folk.
I have all kinds of problems about this movie, even the original, right?
Yes.
So I love the original, right? But the Puerto Ricans in New York were the last group of immigrants that came to New York City, but they were the actual first group of immigrants that came to New York City. They had nothing, right? Like everybody else had a foundation. I believe that at that point when Puerto Ricans came, the economy fell out of manufacturing. So Puerto Ricans couldn't go get jobs sewing or building or doing anything in the manufacturing industry in New York City. So they were relegated to food stamps and government assistance. It really wasn't helpful for them. Everybody else had a way to build as they went up. That aside, right? For me, the representation is weird, right? Because you have all these people that move into this neighborhood and then are subsequently hated. And I think he could have done a better job at representing the way that feels from that side if he was going to fix it, because that's something that happened in the 50s. And all the representation was purely from a white side. Why wouldn't you make the representation something from a more grounded version of what it really feels like to be an immigrant? And they didn't do that for me. It was always about assimilation. How do you become white, right? And that's Italian Americans became white and Jewish Americans became white. And I know this might be controversial, but that's everybody at some point in the census ended up putting white on their census card, but they didn't really show how that would work or what it feels to be like of another race, in my opinion.
A lot of the racism we're talking about from the original is sort of baked into the production of the time. It's like you mentioned the brown-faced bill and sort of how it captured what the motivations of folks, I think to your point, Roger, about assimilation and sort of a view of that in a certain way. Obviously, it's a beloved musical. There's problems there, and I think Spielberg recognized there's a problem. That's why he goes to Tony Kushner and says, we're going to rewrite the book to add more depth. And it's not really so much the racism of the piece, but rather sort of the racism of the production, that we're going to cast, Latin actors to play these characters, and a sort of an attempt to address. And I think that's where it starts to become problematic, like trying to address it. then you have to start to ask why. Like, I don't think you can actually fix what's going on. And if you're not really going after the lyrics and sort of how things are baked, I think you're just opening up more problems. It makes me question why this needs to be done at all.
No, exactly. Why did it need to exist, and why did you have to do it again? It feels to me that it has all the same problems as the original, even if they changed a couple of words in the lyrics. Right? There's never any reason about why we all become American. Yeah, like if you come to America, it's going to be great, but it doesn't state anything about coming to America and being brown and then having to assimilate. Right? Like my real name is Rogelio Alejandro Murillo Mendoza. Right? But you say that to somebody that's American, and they're like, "What? Rogelio?" Like, "No, it's Rogelio." And they're like, "Rogelio." I'm like, "Okay, I can't say that. Okay, it's Roger." Right? But it's kind of the same thing. Like, without addressing those issues about assimilation, I don't think this film really works. And I don't think it'll ever really work. It's wonderful. I love the musicals, and I want dance. And like Maria's like my favorite thing ever.
The color, the dresses, the whole, yeah.
It's beautiful. The scene where the Jets are running through the Upper East Side, I think it was actually Lincoln Hill, so it's like somewhere on the West Side, right? Like, it's amazing from a production standpoint to put that many cars on the street, to dress that many people, to do that much hair. Like, I can't even understand how much that would cost or how long it would take every morning to have to do that. It's amazing. But from my cultural perspective, I think it lacks. I'm brown in America, and that shit was hard. Right? It's still some days hard when you tell somebody that your name is Roger and they're like, Jose.
That's so
Right? So that's without addressing those things. They didn't address any of those things that made it a concern. They had all the opportunity to, and they just wanted to make a prettier version of the original movie.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. Obviously, being a Caucasian person, I don't have the insight that Roger does. But what I did like about it, I like the actors. I thought Ariana DeBose in particular, and David Alvarez, I think, plays Bernardo. I just thought they were excellent. And I also like Mike Feist, who plays Riff. I would give that guy an Oscar nomination for that. I thought he was excellent. But yeah, I mean, the movie, obviously, I grew up with the original. It was my mother's favorite film, and so it was always on. And when you're a kid, you don't recognize the problems. But then now looking at it, I think it's the same thing. It's like, why did he need to do this one? Why don't you just do The Music Man or something? Like, this is treacherous waters to wade into.
My biggest fear is that I think he used to always say in interviews that before he made any movie, he watched West Side Story and Lawrence of Arabia. And that's my biggest fear, is that he's going to try and do that next.
In a year when you have, on the musical front, you have In the Heights, that you can discuss whether you liked it or didn't, but it's a modern and sincere take on these sort of issues in a way that this whole sort of back and forth reminds me very much of Green Book doing so well in 2018, when you've got If Beale Street Could Talk over here on the side, a much better look at the African-American experience than this. And I'm afraid that Spielberg and West Side Story just sucking the oxygen out of a conversation that we can't have. And in fact, we are trying to have.
Yeah, and also because of what Bill said, that West Side Story is Romeo and Juliet. So you're retelling a retelling of a retelling.
Yeah, it's West Side Story is the modernization of a 16th century.
But wasn't it supposed to be originally about what the Jewish diaspora versus the Irish diaspora, right? Yeah. Like, that was the original story, right? But they couldn't actually sell that, so they sold it like the Puerto Ricans against the Americans. So I think maybe it loses a little bit something in that context, or maybe it doesn't, right? Because I can only speak for what it means to be Latin American in the United States. That diaspora is so branched, right? Like, I can tell you what it feels like to be Colombian here and have my experience, but I can't tell you exactly what it means to be a first or second generation Puerto Rican in the United States, right? but I imagine that the racism has to be somewhat similar. For me, I think from that perspective, having a bunch of white guys tell you the story about what it's supposed to be like to be Puerto Rican in the United States is disingenuous, and it felt disingenuous to me, and it felt like it was lacking, especially in this day and age.
I'd honestly like to see Lynn's version of West Side Story before I'd like to see this version of Tick Tick Boom. But that's a conversation for next week.
Switch directors on those.
Yeah, except that Lynn will be smart enough to be like, but do we need this? So it goes back to like, you're never gonna get this.
It was a difficult thing for me to watch, even though I really love all the singing and dancing.
But also, can we just also still talk about how amazing Rina Moreno is? I just want to put that back into the
amazing.
At like 90 years old.
Yes.
And she's probably finally getting the money she deserves for the original, being 100%. A producer on Spielberg's version.
100%. Yes.
Well, I also just do want to say Janusz Kaminski, Adam Stockhausen, the production design, again, the sort of technical category, just absolutely beautiful to look at. Those costumes, as Roger mentioned.
Yes, the costumes, but also like
gorgeous.
The red and the blue. The jets are always in blue. The sharks are always in red. But then suddenly Maria's in blue when she's going to meet Tony. But then she's in pink when she's still with the other cleaners at the mall overnight. But then now she's back in blue. Tony's in red when he's going to go stop the fight. So just all these little small things.
It really is. To me, it's probably the prettiest movie. And I think he should get best cinematographer.
Janusz, yeah.
I mean, he won't. It'll go to Dune, but we'll talk about that.
Really?
Sadly.
Really?
It's like all sand. It's just sand.
Listen, we get into the Oscar series next. I'll have a couple of actual cinematographers come and talk about that, so you guys can stow those opinions until you've heard what they have to say about it.
Fair enough.
But while we're talking about the production on this, I will say, and maybe it's because I was out of it from the beginning, but I noticed a couple of times there's some jump cuts in some of the music numbers that made me wonder if they actually got the coverage they needed to really deliver on this. Like, that was a surprise to me, given that it's Spielberg.
Have you guys ever worked with him, with Steven? I did 2 films. I wasn't in production at that point. I was working for actors, but he literally kind of like, in general, with the exception of Saving Private Ryan, he knows every cut that he's going to make, which kind of pisses the actors off because he'll cut you mid dialogue. You'll be in the middle of a line and he'll be like, cut, good, moving on. And they're like, wait, can we just, and he's like, no, I'm going to be around. I'll be on the other side for this already. So I didn't catch any jump cuts, but if it's there, he made a choice for whatever reason. In my experience of seeing him on set for 2 films. And
I have worked filming musicals for, granted, TV, which is not quite the same, but timing shots so that lyrics pick up at just the right moment and you don't lose the beat when you're on a different set and having to move. If you don't shoot in order, which oftentimes you can't, it is unbelievably tricky to make sure you get the exact right moment of picking up on the beats and at the right moment. So that's more what I was watching for. I'm like, that matched perfectly.
So our last nominee by the DGA for theatrical film is Denis Villeneuve for Dune.
Oh, is that how you say it?
Unless you're British, then you say June.
No, not.
You're talking about Villeneuve? Villeneuve.
I've been saying Denis this whole time.
Oh yeah, Denis.
Yes.
No, I meant for Dune. Never mind.
All right. Well, Dune. What do you guys think?
Good, but I'm in the part 1 shouldn't be nominated. It's not a whole movie yet. It's half of a movie. It's like the same thing with Return of the King and Two Towers and this. You can nominate the others. It's still only half of a movie. You don't get to.
The movie ends in the second act.
I know. Okay, so Irishman, 3 hours long. I can sit there and say, well, the first half was great. Doesn't matter. If the second half sucks, the movie sucks. I'm not saying the Irishman sucks. We've already had that conversation, but I'm saying you have to look at a movie as a whole. This is only the first half. It's not a whole movie yet.
Well,
all right, I'll back down.
Yeah, calm down. But please. No. only because, and it's a vote of what I thought of the rest of the movies this year. But yes, this one was my favorite. But recognizing what you say, did they actually shoot the second half yet? I mean,
No.
I didn't think so, but I was so engrossed that 2.5 hours in, I was like, all right, now the good stuff starts. And I looked at the time and went, oh shit, the movie's over. What the hell's going on? Because I'm a massive fan of the books. Yes, I've read 16 of the 19 that there are or whatever. So I, again, much like with West Side Story, I'm a little jaded because I'm going off of the source material. But it was so on the source material. And I think that's what's making the people that have read the book go, oh shit, they're actually doing it the right way. Because you can literally sit there and go, George Lucas stole that. Oh my, George Lucas stole that. Now they're even talking about the spice in the Mandalorian. I'm like, at least now everybody knows it. Like, I mean, I love Star Wars to death, but I discovered in my 20s that it was all in Dune.
Yeah, but George Lucas figured out 55 years ago how to put it on the screen.
Right, exactly. And you couldn't do this. And David Lynch, who I also love, kind of proved that you couldn't do this 30 years ago. That just the force field, the personal shields, were
the blocky
impossible
square looking.
It's hilarious, but you try and show that to a kid that never played Atari 2600, and they don't get why that's acceptable for the 80s.
Well, and the limitation of the film. I went back and watched the original after I had seen Dune twice, actually, and the attempt to sort of shoehorn so much exposition into it and sort of talky in a way that the action even gets lost in the Lynch version. This, though, I will disagree with you, Katie. They didn't know they were going to get a second film. I think it does stand on its own. Yes, there's more to come, but what's delivered in this, I think, from a dramatic perspective, to be able to tell the story that it did, to be, like Bill said, just be enraptured for more than 2 hours with the story they do, plus all of the Villeneuve trademarks, I think, is sort of that ominous feeling, just the sort of epic landscapes, the use of soundtrack, the direction. I think the acting is fantastic in this across the board from actors that I didn't expect them to be at this level. I give him credit for all of that, and I do think it deserves a directing nom. Whatever happens with the second film, this film I think stands on its own. Again, not in terms of story, but in terms of skill on what it is. And so I'm very happy to see it here. It's my favorite film of the year, just hands down.
Where do you go from like this to the more complicated versions of the book, right? So like, do you go from this to the end of this original story, Dune? And then where do you go from like Messiah and Children of Dune?
Well, that's the thing, is that this is, people don't even realize it, but this is already a Jason Momoa project, because Duncan Idaho's the one character that's
becomes the hero all the way along.
Yeah,
yes, he's the clone of everybody.
So, Jason Momoa has a problem tomorrow and doesn't make movies anymore, then never mind for the Dune sequels, basically.
I think it's an interesting question. Yes, they're shooting the second half of the first book now. I don't know that Denis Villeneuve is going to stick around for a third movie on that. I think will move on to some other property. I don't see him doing 10 of these. I don't know that I'd want there to be 10 of them. I would love to see his take on some of the later books, but I don't know that it's going to go in that direction. I think these two movies are going to be done.
You've got a sea change between a second and a third movie with the books, though. So he could stick around through this, and he could do a trilogy through Dune, Messiah, and somebody else do Children.
Marvel did it. Marvel managed to make 10 movies and make them cohesive. So I mean, but what's that mean for somebody? So for a film series that's very highbrow, which I've always expected Dune to be.
Well, Marvel also had Kevin Feige. So Dune, look, I've never read the books. I just know of them. I'm aware of them, but I've heard talk. I know the stories. All I need. I don't need to go back and read them. But you have one person who is maybe not the mastermind, but seeing it all the way through. So that's what I would be worried about in this case. Is one person going to make sure, like, and maybe it's Villeneuve who is a producer on all of them, like, hey, no, you need to do this, we need to do this, or has a concept in mind for book 10 just to make sure you can make it all the way through.
Is somebody steering the ship?
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't think there's anybody steering the ship.
That would be my concern. Going back to my original concept of, but so I understand that there are more books. I get that it's one story, but the moment you say part one in the opening title credits, it's like,
by doing that, you're taking a pretty big gamble. It's pretty ballsy as a filmmaker to say up front, oh, this is only half of a story. I'm a huge Villeneuve fan. I don't think the guy has made a bad movie yet, and he's made about 7 or 8 now, which is kind of mind-boggling. This movie, I had not read the books. I'd seen the Lynch original when I was a teenager, probably, and thought it was just super weird and didn't get it. This one I had to watch a couple times to like figure it out. But once I did, and I plugged it earlier, they should give you some money, Skid. But if you have an Apple TV and you connect your AirPods to it, and watch the movie, that you get sound design stuff that, like, I mean, because I didn't see it theatrically, incredible, just incredible. Every element of the movie, as Bill was saying, the shields and the way that he interpreted all of these things, just kind of astonishing.
Like, I even like something I've heard. I was trying to explain it on a third and fourth watching to some children, and kids, let me tell you. To me, I was like the Atreides' secret battle language and the Atreides' secret sign language, which goes into great detail in the book and becomes a major plot point. It's like, it's there, but I don't know whether a normal person would just not even notice that, or you guys tell me.
No, the sign language was really cool. I thought that was great.
Every time I try to get to the first 100 pages of the book, I stop.
Yeah, I'm not pushing the book. I read it as a kid, and there's a lot of sort of, let me just sort of scan this page because, still talking about sand, Just kind of flip ahead. Like, it's
100 pages of bullshit before you get somewhere else where you can actually get to the plot.
There's
right?
400 pages of the Two Towers. That's 2 guys walking through a swamp. All right, so
yeah, but there's hobbits.
By the way, so they're not shooting the second one yet, I don't think, but they're mounting up to in later this year. But I don't know that he would do Messiah, because they've announced that Denis Villeneuve is preparing another big book, Rendezvous with Rama. Is going to be a movie that he's doing. And he's developing for television. I think he's going to direct a pilot, something called Dune, the Sisterhood, which maybe Bill knows about as well.
Yeah, it's a prequel to about the Bene Gesserit. That's like
nerd,
the 17th book.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, maybe he's going to do like a Chris Nolan overseeing the Superman movies and stuff like that. Maybe he's still going to sort of, he's going to stay above everything after the second film is done and just sort of like pop in and go, yeah, I would probably do this or that or change that. But
I think it's a really hard franchise to stay on top of, honestly. Like it's so cerebral and deep in some places that it's difficult to actually be able to get to everybody.
Well, you can bet there's somebody at Warner Brothers whose job it is to figure that out, because there's no way that they're going to let it go if they can make more money off of this run. We'll just have to see what comes to the next movie, like how well the
Bill,
second
you
movie does.
You got to tell me, Bill. We didn't see Josh Brolin die on screen. Does he? Are we going to get a little more Josh Brolin?
Read the book.
I'm not gonna love it now.
I mean, that's the old standard. If you don't see them die on screen, they're still alive. Let's be honest.
Sure,
that's
yeah.
just how it works.
I just had to know.
No, you got more of him for sure, but you don't have more Jason Momoa until the next book. Yeah.
Okay.
I will say at the very end, seeing the guy ride the sandworm, I'm like, oh, there's a lot more to this world that we don't know. That, like, okay. Look, all that being said, of like, oh, it's one book and this and that, I still loved it. I mean, like you said, Shaun, Villeneuve has never done a bad movie as far as I'm concerned. So it's not the subject not matter is maybe not my cup of tea, but story-wise, it's great.
Did
I'm
you
in.
just like Timothy Chalamet, Katie?
I really don't.
But Paul's supposed to be 15, and he looks 15.
He's supposed to be 15?
Yeah.
I would have said a scrawny 18-year-old, a scrawny 20-year-old. Like,
I'm fine with Timmy Chalamet. For me, it was all about Rebecca Ferguson.
Yes.
I thought she was great.
Yes.
She killed.
And Oscar Isaac. I thought Oscar Isaac was brilliant.
Well, I think the second half of this is going to be a bigger lift for the young actors, and we'll just have to see how they pull it off and what Denis gets out of them as far as performances. So to wrap it up, guys, let's go around the table. Of the 5 films we're looking at here, go ahead and put them in order. Who's brave enough to do that?
All right. I would say, for me, Dune, well, all right, I'm hesitating. Licorice Pizza and Belfast, I'm kind of 2 and 3. I think that Belfast is 2 and Licorice Pizza is 3. Power of the Dog, West Side Story last.
All right, I'm gonna go Dune, Power of the Dog, West Side Story, Belfast, Licorice Pizza.
I'm gonna say Dune, West Side Story, Licorice Pizza, Power of the Dog, Belfast.
Wait a minute. With all the problems you had with West Side Story, you still think it's the second best of these 5 films?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to go Power of the Dog, Dune, Belfast, West Side Story, Licorice Pizza.
All right. Well, the correct answers are Dune is the number 1, Power of the Dog is 2nd, Licorice Pizza is 3rd, Belfast is 4th, and West Side Story should never been made. That's 5th. All right, guys. Well, we'll find out what the voters decide. The ceremony will be on March 12th. But before then, you guys will all be back again later this week when we're going to talk about the first-time feature nominees. Looking forward to it, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Kid.
Bye. Thanks, kid. Bye.
Is that really the voice you want to go out on? I'm going to leave that.
No, that's it.
Listeners, hope you enjoyed that. If you're interested in learning more about the podcast, please visit our website, belowtheline.biz. That's B-I-Z. You'll find links to all of our social media, and it's easy to peruse past episodes. Thanks to Curtis Five for our music, John Wan for our logo, and loyal listeners for sticking with us. If you're enjoying the podcast, please rate us. This has been Below the Line. Let me try an outro again. I don't know why I feel off on it. I think I'm disturbed by all the negative things Katie said about Dune. I'm off my game.
It was horrible. You were right. You were right, Katie.
So upset, Katie, about it being a part 1.
I was just saying, like, the concept of it being nominated. Nothing's bad about the movie.
It shouldn't have been nominated for anything.
He's just saying it's Return of the King, Skid. That's all. It's just
That's all
Return of
I'm
the King.
saying. Like Two Towers. No. Return of the
No.
King, yes.
Oh, we have a separate conversation about those movies.